everyone, and welcome to this recap from round 3 of the candidates tournament in Moscow. I'm GM Lars Bo Hansen, Don Corleone here at ICC, and those of you who are joining John Watson and me today for the third round will certainly have seen that this was a hugely fighting round. Maybe so far we have not seen the most polished or perfect chess. It has been quite a nervous event in the candidates so far, and this round was not really an exception to that. But certainly we have a lot of fight, and it's a delight as a chess fan to follow the interesting games that we see on the board. What we'll see on the board today will be 3 of the games for today's round. I'll look at the games in the order by which they finished, and ending with this very exciting 6-hour endgame between Nakamura and Svidler that eventually ended in a draw. But before we got that far, let's first get started with the game between Giri and Karjakin. Of course, Sergei Karjakin, one of the 2 leaders going into this round, winning his game yesterday when Hikaru Nakamura blundered a piece in a slightly worse position, and Anand, who won his first round game against Veselin Topalov. So clearly with white, the young Giri playing in his first candidates tournament was expected to try to put some pressure on one of the co-leaders. And the game started with a Queen's Indian with this old Nimzovich move, bishop a6, hitting the pawn on c4. The idea is that white will have to defend this pawn, and when the bishop later drops back to b7, white will be left with some dark squared weaknesses now that both the b3 and c4 pawns are on light squares. So a small nuance developed already 100 years ago by Aronian Nimzovich. The bishop b4 check also is about getting white to commit his bishop to not the most perfect square. Clearly that bishop would now prefer to go to b2. So after luring that bishop to d2, Karjakin drops back to e7 with the bishop. This is all opening theory. As we discussed in the broadcast, John Watson and myself, certainly these nuances in terms of move orders and small changes in the setups, that is the bread and butter of some of the superstars in chess at the moment, and certainly something that's not so easy to stay on top of if you're not a professional player like them. But so far, the game is following the game between Karjakin as white and Hikaru Nakamura from yesterday, and Karjakin apparently is ready to play this type of position with both colors, which again also shows the let's say versatility of the top players, that they are able to play the same position with different colors. But there is a slight difference here, because in this game here, Giri plays knight e5, which is of course a very logical move, establishing the knight on a nice outpost in the center. But Karjakin himself played queen c2 against Nakamura, and as I said, ended up winning after Nakamura blundered in a somewhat worse position. This goes in a different direction though, in that Giri plays this knight e5. The bishop drops back, as we talked about, has done its duty on a6 and now wants to reinforce the d5 pawn. And white in turn has to reroute his bishop to b2. That bishop is doing nothing on d2. So this is all standard and has been played in some games before. It's not one of the main lines in this Queen's Indian, but certainly the setup as such is well known. And now white has a big choice to make. Certainly he could consider reinforcing his knight on e5 with f4,